I don't know how I thought I was going to attempt this without a hauls, but it was pure pride. Like I am Icarus. No hauls is the sun. Hey everybody, welcome to Life Behind the Cover. I'm Taylor, and today I'm doing my July and Reading Rush wrap-up with the hauls in my mouth. Also, my bookshelves are a little bit in disarray because I've already pulled books to be showing you guys. My boyfriend stole Arch Enemies, and I don't know why because I'm pretty sure he has one, and I don't know where it is. So, I failed the reading rush. I only read 3 books. I was hoping to read the full 7. And my whole month of July was not a bad reading month, but not a great one either, and I really hoped it would be great. I only read 7 books, which was what I was supposed to read in a week, so in reality, like, that's just a failure. I have a couple reasons why I failed the reading rush. I think I'm going to go over that, but I'm going to do that after I go over every book that I read this month. So if you're not interested in my, poor excuses for not finishing books, you can just skip that part at the end. The first book I read this July was Always and Forever, Lara Jean by Jenny Han. I finished that on July 7th. I finished that on July 8th, so obviously there was some time I could have been doing reading at the beginning of the month that I really didn't. That said, this was one of the books that I wanted to finish because I'm trying to finish a series that I started. This was the last book. I can't explain this book because that would give away the 2 previous books, but I will talk a little bit about my experience and the reading and what the first book is about. So I'm sure everybody and their mother already knows To All the Boys I've Loved Before and what it's about. I'm still going to talk about it a little bit in case you don't. So it is a book about a girl who writes love letters to people that she has crushes on or loves at the time, but she never sends them. They're just to kind of get those feelings out for herself, and they end up getting sent out. I'm sure most people have seen the Netflix movie. The first one is amazing. Second one, not as amazing, but good. And so this was the finale to that. Lara Jean is dealing with her current relationship. No spoilers. She's dealing with college, what she wants to do, expectations of her family, dynamics changing. It's a really good book. I did have some problems with it. It wasn't a full 5 stars for me. It ended up being a 4-star. I think it was a good finale because it ended well, but I will say that there were certain things I felt needed a little bit more depth to them. For example, like Lara Jean goes on a trip to New York, and I feel like that went by like that. Like, we were talking about it, and then New York happened, and it was like 1 chapter or something like that. It felt like we were leading up to something big that we would talk about a lot and experience a lot, and we really didn't. And that's just one instance of that happening. I felt like that happened multiple times through the book, where there were these big events or things that were happening, but we didn't get enough of them, so they didn't feel like big events. Maybe that was the intention because it was trying to show graduation year and how it goes by fast and stuff like that. I'm not sure. Obviously, I'm not the author. For me, I would have just preferred a little bit more depth. And I think that even if they had gotten rid of 1 event or so and added more to another one, it would have worked out better for my reading experience personally. That said, I mean, it sounds like I hate this book. I really don't. I gave it 4 stars. It was good. I liked how it ended. There were some things that I didn't super love about it. The next 2 books I did not read back to back, but they are together, so I'm going to talk about it, which is Saga Volume 3 and Saga Volume 4. Saga 3 and 4 were my first time reading these. Volumes 1 and 2, I had already read them, and so it was a reread for me. These ones were new to me, and I had a lot of feelings. I read Saga Volume 4 in my Reading Rush Day 2 vlog, so if you want to see me experience that, you can go watch that. I'm going to talk a little bit about Saga really quick, even though I feel like I've talked about it so much leading up to Reading Rush and other things I've talked about, so I'm going to try to keep it brief. Saga is about 2 warring planets, creatures, civilizations who have been at war for a really long time and have involved other planets in their war, and they're these 2 people who are on either side of the militaries and fall in love and have a baby. And people are trying to kill the baby, and they don't want to let it out that something like this can exist and that these types of people can coexist. That's kind of the baseline of how the story starts. In Volume 3 and Volume 4, we're dealing with aftermaths of things. Volume 4 was kind of upsetting for me. I think that anybody who read it probably knows why, but I don't want to go into it because of spoilers. That said, it wasn't a bad book. It was just difficult because things were happening that I didn't want to happen. Because you love these people and these characters and you just want good things to happen to them. And that's all I'm going to say. I rated both volumes a 4. Like I said, they were really good. I really enjoyed reading them. Next up was my first and only reread for this month. Can I speak today? Which was A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. Just making sure it's not Victoria Schwab. This book was a book I read a couple years ago, but I stopped after the first book. And so when it was my turn to pick a book for book club, we had a... It's hard to explain. We had a round where everybody could pick a book that they'd already read before, because we had previously had a rule that you couldn't pick that because we'd always end up just reading everybody's favorite books instead of everybody getting to experience something together. So we had chosen a round where everybody could pick books that they love that they wanted other people to read. For me, because I really want this year to be a year where I am finishing series, I picked A Dark Shade of Magic so that I could continue on with the series. So it was a reread for me. That said, it's been a while since I read it. I think I read this one in audiobook this time, the first time I read it physically. The audiobook is okay. I don't super love the accents that they did, but I think if you like that kind of stuff, if you like the narrator super getting into characters, you might enjoy it. That said, a great book. I hope to finish the series before the end of the year. I love the idea of all the magic and stuff like that, so... For me, I mean, it's a book that's been talked about time and time again. It's very inventive. This also got 4 stars for me. I feel like this was a 4-star month, which is not that bad in reality. Okay, so for anybody who doesn't know, A Darker Shade of Magic is about this world where there are parallel Londons. Now, these worlds are all different, but every world has a London with, like, the Thames and certain spots that are, like, fixed points in all of the Londons. Each of these places has like a different level of magic based on some of the history that went down in here. And we follow Kel, who is an Antari, one of only 2 who can travel between the different Londons, and he's a messenger. But he also is kind of running an illegal side business, and it gets him in trouble. He has to try to fix it. I think for the most part, books are really good going in without knowing much about them, and I'd say that this one is true for that, because as you learn more about the worlds, it becomes kind of more apparent why the story is going certain ways. That said, I very much recommend it. Next, I read I'll Be the One by Lila Lee. This was my first day of the reading rush. I started with this book, finished it in one day, and so my entire reading rush day 1 vlog is mostly central to this, so all my feelings about this are in that. So if you'd like to watch that, I'll put that up in the eye for you to watch. That said, I'll go over it really quickly. This is a book about a chubbier Korean girl living in California who is obsessed with dancing and singing. But her mom doesn't think that dancing is for bigger girls, so she has kind of a strained family relationship. She tries out to be part of a K-pop competition to be the next great, like, K-pop star, and she gets into the competition, so the book follows that. I think that's all I'm going to say. I really talked about it in that one video, so I don't want to be monotonous for people who watched it. Another 4 stars. Next up, on my second day of the reading rush, where I read Saga Part 4, I also read Stardust, and I did it via audiobook. Again, I talk about it in that video. But the audiobook is phenomenal. It has an entire voice cast. It's very quick. I would say it's probably the best way to experience the book. Now, I haven't physically read it, so I can't say for sure. But I think what's so fun about Stardust is that it is a fairy tale. And when you're listening to it, it feels like a fairy tale is being read to you. So it's it's almost meant for that type of experience. And the full cast is just wonderful because it's very easy to follow along. It's kind of difficult to explain what Stardust is about. It's about a lot of things. It's about a star falling from the sky. It's about a boy who is in love and trying to get the star for his love. It is about the royalty and succession. We're following lots of different story threads throughout the whole thing. It was like 3 hours of an audiobook, so if that sounds interesting to you, read it. Also, it's Neil Gaiman, so you know it's good. I don't know what I rated that. One sec. Goodreads. I didn't rate that. 3 stars? It's not that it was a bad book. For me, I didn't feel a super huge connection to any of the characters. And because I wasn't with it for a super long time, I didn't feel very attached. So for me, it wasn't this phenomenal book. It was like a very like beautiful and whimsical fairy tale. But I wasn't like, oh my god, this is like a gorgeous story. It was just good, generally. So, I don't know. I think 3 stars is a good fit for it. That said, it's not that I don't recommend it, because I do. Go read it. Go audiobook it. And the last book I read this month, which if you watched my TBR, you will know that this was the book I was least excited about, was The Dream Thieves, which is the second book in the Raven Cycle by Maggie Stiefvater. Now, I talked about being less excited for this one because it had been a while since I had read the first one, so I wasn't super into this series. That said, I got very into it very quickly, which I knew I would. Like, it wasn't about not enjoying it or liking the concept. It was just, sometimes when we get new books, we get really wrapped up in them, right? And I think that for sure happened. That said, this book is one of the reasons I did not win the reading rush. Because it says it is 437 pages. And the lie detector concluded that that was a lie. Now, I'm going to prove my point here. I'll Be the One, the book I read on the first day of the reading rush, is 323 pages. So about 100 pages less than The Dream Thieves. That said, let's take a look at the first page of each book. Shall we? Notice the text size difference. Now, I don't mind a book being long. I don't mind taking a long time to get through a book. In fact, I enjoy long books. I enjoy having more to read. But this book is a liar because it looks like a normal-sized 400-page book, but it is in fact a very difficult book to get through. It took me days to get through this, and I could have, like a book this size, traditionally, a 400-page book, I could get through in a day, clearly. I demonstrated that. I mean, it's not a book, at least for me, that I could get through in a day. Easily. Because it was a lot thicker and denser than what I expected. So, once again, this is a sequel. It's obviously my year of sequels. But, I'm going to talk about The Raven Boys really quickly. Because I can't talk about this book. The Raven Boys, I think, once again, is better left kind of just go into it reading it. I think go into it knowing it is a fantasy. It is about something that I don't think anybody would think about for a book, which is what makes it a great fantasy. It is great friendship dynamics, interesting and unique characters who have faults and are real feeling. It's about, there's psychics in there, there's an old king. I don't want to give a ton away. So that's kind of all I'm going to say. This series obviously is not a new series. It is well beloved by most of the YA book community, and I think so for a reason. I gave this book a 4-star. I'd say it was almost a 5-star, but my problem, if you want to call it that, with this book was that it didn't feel like it super led up to anything great. Meaning that, like, I felt as though continuously it was, things were happening and new things were developing and we were keeping going, but it wasn't like leading up to something. It just like kind of on a line. Like it just, yeah, it was interesting and we were going and new things were happening, but it didn't lead up to something like huge for me. I think some people might dispute that because like something did happen towards the end, but to me it just wasn't like super hyped. It was just clearly the obvious conclusion to the story. If that makes any sense. That said, phenomenal book, phenomenal series. I don't have the third book here because I'm reading that right now. And I'm actually really happy that I read this for Reading Rush. and that I told myself that this should be one that I read in the middle of the week, because I'm very excited again about this series, and I remember what I loved about it. Now that we've talked about all the books I've read this month, let's get down to the brass of tacks. Why did I fail the reading rush? 3 reasons. One, obviously, was the Dream Thieves. I already said that. It really set me off because I expected to be able to read it in one go, and I couldn't read it in one day. That said, other factors played into that. Number 2, COVID. Now, I've talked about this before. I'm high risk. It turned out that my sister had been in contact with somebody who was in contact with somebody who had been diagnosed with COVID. So their family had been diagnosed, and my sister was in contact with them, and we live in the same house. I had to leave my house for 3 days until her results got back. She was negative. We're all good. But we did have to be a little over dramatic because I'm high risk, and so if she had had it and I hadn't contracted it already, we didn't want me doing it while I was waiting for test results, right? So it was a dramatic move, but it was just to be safe. So I stayed in an Airbnb in the city that I live in, but I didn't, it like really set off like my groove and my schedule and stuff like that. I didn't bring my camera with me, and I got a little reading done, but not a lot. My next reason, which is, I might have 4 reasons. Because I was sick throughout the whole thing and I was not feeling good. And so that's probably a reason that I didn't read as much. But I think the biggest reason was probably my boyfriend. So I hadn't been able to be near my boyfriend for 3 months because he worked or was in contact with other people and therefore could not be in contact with me. Once again, seems dramatic. It had to be. We were quarantined separately. He got 2 weeks off of work, so he got to be tested for coronavirus and came back negative, and he came to stay with me for the 2 weeks he was off work. I could have read during that time. I didn't, because it had been a while since I'd seen him, and I wanted to spend a lot of time doing things with him together. Now, it's a bad excuse because I could have done it, but it is probably the biggest reason that I didn't, because I was on before he came. Like, I was doing it. It's his fault. That said, the reading rush has put 2 loves in for me. So, number 1, I really enjoyed a readathon. I'm a person who does well under pressure, generally. So if I have to do something, generally I'll do it and pretty well. So, this was my first readathon, and I loved it, and I can't wait to do more readathons. I wish I could just do my own reading rush, but that's fine. The next thing is that I kind of enjoyed doing reading vlogs because I got to talk about how I was feeling about what I was reading as I was reading it, which was a really interesting experience for me. So I'm hoping to do more of that. I have a reading experiment that I'm going to try next week, so I will be reading and doing a vlog while doing that. That's all I have. Hopefully my next readathon I will not fail at. But thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe if you want to see more like it. Thanks so much for watching.